It is now my privilege to introduce our commencement keynote speaker, Dr. Ray Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell is Dean of Medical Education at Georgetown University School of Medicine and an internal medicine and pediatrics physician. He is a Joseph Butanas Professor at Georgetown University School of Medicine. Additionally, Dr. Mitchell has been honored with multiple Golden Apple Awards for medical student education. He has received the Kaiser Permanente Award for Outstanding Clinical Teacher at the Georgetown Medical Center. And please now join me in welcoming my esteemed and dear colleague, Dean Ray Mitchell.
Thank you, Dean Folberg, from one headmaster to another. President Peskovitz, members of the medical class of 2018, and indeed the full two circles of OUWB in front of me. I'm deeply humbled to present for this wonderful occasion. What an impressive group of graduates. I believe, Dr. Peskovitz, that this group will deliver for you the vision of Oakland University, transforming individuals to leave a lasting impact on the world through the power of education and research. I'm also encouraged that at least one of you seems to wear bow ties. To help you understand a little more about me, let me share a story. I sat in the park in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, heard an unmistakably high-pitched, lilting music moving through the arboretum. As it came closer, surprisingly, it came from a small elderly man wearing large headphones, whistling with incredible tone, musicality, and volume. My companion asked him a strange question. "What are you listening to?" He looked surprised. "No one ever asked me what I'm listening to. It's Tchaikovsky." He spent years of his life training to whistle with music fidelity to opera on his family's radio. He used whistling to bridge people with whom he could not speak. My daughter addressed him in parting with the salutation, "Namaste." Now, sometimes that gets a little overused in yoga studios, but it has a deep and powerful meaning. From the Sanskrit nama, it originates from benevolent unselfishness or admission of unity in one essence. The light within me recognizes the light within you. The lesson I learned in that interaction changed the way I deal with patients. It's crucial to find a way to ask the right questions and find the light in the heart of every patient. Let me share also just a little about who I am as a clinician. The light in my soul is driven by encounters, as it will be for you, with patients. 3 brief vignettes follow, which are illustrative. Incidentally, don't panic, they are not on the exam. Like President Peskovitz, I'm a pediatric subspecialist. I care for children with chronic, life-threatening disease. Sadly, I see children die. I watched one mother holding a child with Kawasaki disease, a very uncommonly fatal disease. She held him in her lap after we were unsuccessful in resuscitating him. I will never erase that image. Was there something else we could have done? We will never know. Cardiology assured me the heart was fine. We never used steroids, based on that time on what I believe to be incomplete data. My heart was heavy. The more I looked inwardly, the heavier it became. Every day, when I think of that child and mother over many years, I revisit the pain. Out of pain, growth occurs. It's never easy. My humanity then did not seem so bright. If only we had tried steroids, if only. What does it feel like in times you're going to be unable to find any light or in yourselves? You each met your first patient, the cadaver. That incredible human whose last thought was to make the world better by teaching you. This past week, we celebrated an interfaith Mass of Remembrance for the families of donors. It included an Islamic chaplain, a Jewish rabbi, a Hindu healer, and of course, at my institution, the Jesuit priest. 5 students read obituaries written with the donor families. It was a tearful encounter for students, families, and faculty, emphasizing the humanity of these wonderful donors. It's a debt for all of us we can never repay. We have to pay it forward. Humanism is a school of thought over centuries centered around the power and agency of the individual. It's the humanity of our patient, but it's also the humanity of our own bright soul. Empathy is critical for healthcare, and many schools strive to develop behaviors that reflect empathy, as graded by our standard patients. However, as one of our students quipped, it's developing empathy muscles. The Dalai Lama is convinced we are hardwired for the generosity of spirit and goodness, but we sometimes go astray. In the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu, they explore joy as the happiness that does not depend on anything that happens. I recommend for you this year, this book should be on your bedside table. They would both argue that our hearts develop habits, and paradoxically, the bigger and more generous our hearts, the greater our sense of personal resilience. We can get discouraged, even in our most compassionate moments. We forget that we should not assume we know everything that's best for our patient. I think of a beautiful 15-year-old Egyptian girl with lupus cerebritis. Her parents reflected their belief and trust in me, yet I felt discouraged as this little girl got sicker despite our efforts. The grandfather would calmly put his arm around my shoulder and share his deep Islamic faith in God's will, inshallah, if God wills it. He prayed in the waiting room every day with such equanimity. I confess my faith was not so strong. He shared a dream he had had and told me, don't worry, after the 3rd pheresis procedure, she will be cured. I tried to believe him. What do we do in these settings? First, we step outside of ourselves and call on other humans. I try to find the smartest people I know in that setting and bring them to the bedside. This time for me, there was lots of time for self-examination. It was my Jesuit colleagues who taught this Episcopalian to pray. I sometimes have to remind myself not to bargain with God, but at least theoretically to give my patients up to God in the process of personal prayer. I usually can't escape giving God some instructions along the way. Please help this patient to heal, and while you're at it, can you raise the platelet count a little bit? For me, this is a method to help me heal, to better know the light within me, but also to heal my pain when I feel outnumbered. My little Egyptian patient survived, awakened from catatonia after the 3rd pheresis, as her Muslim grandfather faithfully predicted. She was a little worse for the wear of chemotherapy, pheresis, and high-dose steroids. But thanks to a wonderful interprofessional team, compassionate nurses, new medications, and perhaps God-given and actively pursued new knowledge, she's in college today. It is the bright light in each of us as it interacts with the light in the patient's soul that creates a unique power. It's the relationship of that light from patient and physician that creates the creation of oneness that makes healing possible. Now, empathy truly is sincerely understanding the patient's pain, but compassion is the creation of kindness in acts that have an impact on that pain. If the Dalai Lama is correct, we are hardwired for compassion, and compassion, however, is a contact sport. We should nurture ourselves for healing. For some it is song, for some it is poetry. I understand at OUWB, for some it is opera. Mostly, it grows from a feeling of emotionally touching and being touched, of understanding the depth of complexity within each of us. It is this creation that brings the power to bring joy and satisfaction to others, but it also brings joy and satisfaction to each of us by touching other lives. Finally, an example from another Michigan colleague. Dr. Francis Collins, the director of the National Institutes of Health, a classmate of mine at UNC, told graduates a story about his encounter while in Africa. An old man was carried into the hospital in Cameroon, neck veins pulsing his earlobes, rising with each deep breath, dyspneic, sitting upright in bed. But wait, you're brilliant clinicians. What does he have? Yes, cardiac tamponade. In that part of the world, tuberculous pericarditis is likely and curable if we aspirate, decompress, and treat. There was only one way to save this man. Without cardiology or even an EKG machine, Dr. Collins blindly aspirated the man's chest and saved his life. The next morning, the interchange was, "Young man, you're confused. You don't know why you're here. God sent you to Africa to save my life." It was a compelling message to Dr. Collins. His response to our students was equally compelling. Even considering the rapidly emerging science, the human genome, it's always about one doctor and one patient. I could have hugged him. My favorite poet has some advice for you. Seek out beauty in your endlessly surprising selves, in paths that you take, in other people. You can never know how much your words and faith in others mean to them. It is your duty as blessed, talented, incredibly compassionate women and men to give to others and to give yourself. To make an effort to notice when your peers are shining brightly and have the self-awareness to find the best in every difficult situation. To find others who might not know their gifts and respect the power of your own success. To recognize and respect the beautiful and infinite possibility in your future, as Dr. Peskovitz just reminded you. The infinite possibilities in your patients, in strangers, in your losses, in your successes, and in your fears. Keep imagining. Thank you, Katie Mitchell, my favorite poet. You will encounter incredible change in medicine in your future. It is changing so rapidly that you'll learn of therapies and mechanisms you haven't studied. CRISPRs and CAR T cells will become old hat. Treatments will move rapidly. Your next 30 to 40 years of practice will bring new challenges but incredible new blessings. Atul Bhatt at UCSF proposes, believe it or not, by linking an electronic medical record for all the patients in the entire University of California system, he can now track de-identified data on 15 million patients. That will change the practice of medicine for all of us going forward. He would challenge us to track every patient we treat, at least in observational clinical trials. We're likely in for a surprise every day from data we currently use but don't understand. Knowledge will be dramatically different and the rate of change will be dizzying. Let me remind you, most of you will remember, Martin Luther King Jr. quoted the words of Theodore Parker's 1810 sermon. It foreshadowed the Civil War. It goes like this: "We cannot understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one, and our eyes but reach a little way. We can divine it by conscience, and we surely know it bends toward justice. Justice will not fail, though wickedness appears strong, and has on its side the armies and thrones of power, the riches and glory of the world. And though poor men crouch down in despair, justice will not perish out of the world of men. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." The arc of history right now seems characterized by war, hatred, injustice, poverty and despair for many in this country and others. I would call on you to work actively to bend the arc. And I'll give you a geometry lesson. The arc, fully bent, becomes the OUWB circle. I hope the light within me has brought a moment of light into your life and the future of your practice. I'm going to ask each one of you young Golden Grizzlies to run from this graduation on a remarkable mission. Don't be discouraged. Don't settle for less than remarkable. Don't settle for the mediocrity of almost. Michigan and the world need you to work on bending this arc. Seek out the light within each patient and within yourself. For your patients, especially for yourself, practice acceptance, forgiveness, and be grateful for the gifts of this school and be grateful for the gifts from each other. Move beyond empathy to compassion, and may you find the joy and wellness every day in this wonderful profession ahead. And now, in the tradition of OUWB, I must give you my gratitude for my time with a wonderful group of you, your families, this community, a wonderful partnership. I have news, Dr. Folberg, you are no longer a new school. This factory is well established, and I congratulate all of you and thank you. Namaste.